2022. First, acknowledge that the Seattle Community Police Commission acknowledges that we are on the traditional land of the Coast Salish people, including the Muckleshoot, Squamish, and Duwamish people, past and present. With humility, we recognize how much we benefit from living on their land and water. The Seattle Community Police Commission honors and lifts up these tribes. We hope that this acknowledgement will encourage authentic relationships with urban Native people and all Coast Salish tribes. And at this time, I'd like to take attendance. I know I only did that a minute ago. We'll start with Prati Dave.
Here.
Austin Field. Here. Reverend Hunter.
Here.
Reverend Walden.
Here.
Douglas Wagner. Not present. Joseph Saya. Not present. Alina Santillan. Not present. Erica Newman. Not present. Tasha Johnson.
Present.
Josiah Washington. Not present. Suzette Dickerson.
Present.
Officer Mark Mullins.
Officer Mark Mullins is present.
Joel Merkel, I am present. Jeremy Wood.
Present.
Okay, thank you. By my count, that's 9, and that indicates to me that we have a quorum. So at this time, is there someone who, as for the first item on the agenda, is there someone that would like to put a motion forward to approve today's draft agenda?
This is Suzette. I'll move to accept the agenda.
Thank you, Suzette. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, we have a second. All in favor of approving today's agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. I appear to have it. Today's agenda is approved. Is there someone who would like to put forth a motion to approve the CPC minutes from June 15? I know we're going back a little bit, but I'm not sure we've approved those minutes at a meeting with the forum. Does anyone approve the June 15 minutes?
Correction for that. My apologies, Joel. It would be just minutes for August the 3rd, 2022.
I'm sorry. Is there anyone that would like to put forth a motion to approve the CPC minutes from August 3rd? Evidently, we've already approved the June 15 minutes. August 3rd minutes, from August 3rd meeting. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
I move that we approve the minutes from August 3rd.
Thank you, Reverend Hunter. Is there a second? I'm separately from the chair and a second. Thank you, Reverend Walden. We have a second. Is there all in favor of approving the minutes from the August 3rd CPC meeting? Please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. The August 3rd CPC meeting minutes are now approved. This brings us to action items to review. My understanding is there are no action items to review at this point. Is that
That is correct.
correct? Okay. And the next on our agenda is we have from 9:15 to 10 a.m. this morning. We have reserved conversation with Mayor Harrell. Not quite 9:15, and Mayor Harrell is not yet here. Can we take a quick break, or is there anything else we can address before Mayor Harrell? Okay. So we don't have anything ready on the agenda at this time. It's 9:14. Mayor Harrell is slated to be here in 1 minute. We're going to go ahead and take a quick a break in our meeting, and we'll be back with you once Mayor Harrell arrives. Thank you.
It's ready.
Okay, good morning. Again, everyone, this is Joel Merkel, co-chair of the Police Commission, Community Police Commission. I just want to announce that Mayor Harrell has joined us. We are currently trying to see if we can get him on video. Could you just give us a couple minutes to figure out the technical aspect of that? We'll be right back and begin our conversation with Mayor Harrell.
So I plugged in. See the cameras look like it's sinking.
We're back on.
Yes.
Questions here.
Mhm.
We, as you know, the commission's been working on a lot of the issues related to community police oversight, and we're very interested in having you here and sharing with us things that you're currently working on with respect to public safety and community police oversight. So thank you for being here, and we're grateful for your speaking. Look forward to hearing from you.
Sure. If now is the time, did I miss the land acknowledgement and the attendance and the other portions, or should I just drive in? So that already occurred.
That did already.
Yes, sir.
So you all were waiting for me all this time. I didn't realize that. Okay, I apologize. I thought I was supposed to be here at 9:15. I tried to write it.
No, you were, and you came right
Okay.
on, right in the agenda slot.
Okay, I thought you still had to do this other stuff. And before I just dive in and start conversing with you all, who all am I talking? Are these just members of the public and other commissioners on the, is that Zoom or Teams? What is that?
This is Zoom, Mayor Harrell, and it's a combination of commissioners and community members as well as council.
And members of the Seattle City Council?
Some of their representatives, yes.
Okay, very good. Okay, thank you. So I'll just take a few minutes and first of all, thank all of you, the listeners on the Zoom call and all the commissioners and the leaders. Thank all of you for doing this work and accountability. That, of course, Seattle is no stranger to the issues that have confronted our country and the city with respect to accountability. You don't grow up in this city, Black or biracial like myself, in the Central District without having some encounters with the police department, either in your own life like mine or in my family's life, without having some I'll say some extremely negative experiences with police officers. You can't escape that, particularly when you went to TT minor, median, darkly. On the other hand, some of the most fondest experiences and nurturing experiences and mentorship experiences I've also had from the police department as well, in moments of crisis and moments of need. I also, as a lawyer, cross-examined many police officers on the stand, and I've had close friends and relatives part of the police department, which tries to give me a lens on police accountability. I think a little differently. I want everyone to be safe first and foremost, whether safe from tier 1 crimes or priority 1 calls, from violence, even safe from the hands of police officers, safe, however you define safety. And so this work that you all are doing, I think many of you know, I was one of the architects of the Community Police Commission. I was the one that sponsored legislation, make sure that those who are always having to pay out of their pocket to come to meetings get that stipends. I've tried to be as supportive as possible when I could. When the consent decree was enacted, one of the things I asked for, both from the governor and from Jenny Durkin, who at that time was U.S. Attorney, I said in the consent decree itself, why not mandate cameras, body cameras? Because you may recall, I was the first one to come out with body cameras as a tool for accountability. That you may recall in the King County Sheriff's Office, there's a very egregious set of facts where a person had his head slammed against the wall, and the officers had said that he had resisted arrest. But it was a camera of a storefront camera that revealed that this person had not resisted. In fact, he was shoved against the wall, a brick wall, I believe, concrete wall, and caused permanent brain damage. Therein lied the need, I think, to have a record, and even working with the ACLU on their concerns of privacy, many of which I share. I tried to lead in accountability. Now, when I became mayor, I made it very clear that I want 7-minute response times. I actually want a higher number of police officers than we see. And I don't back away from that, although I'm sure many of our fine listeners and even perhaps people in this room disagree with that approach. there's room to debate and disagree. That what I do when I talk about numbers of officers, I talk about what kind of officer that would represent. Our recruiting plan was passed 6-3 yesterday. I specifically talk about recruiting from our community, culturally competent people with new skill sets of mediation. I've been going to every single roll call, sometimes at 3 a.m., 7 p.m., 11 p.m., looking the officers in their eyes and saying, this, under the Harrell administration, this kind of officer that I want. I even said it to my directors, my cabinet, my 41 officers. I said, look, this is my vision. I think it's the community's vision. And if you don't like it, quit. It's as simple as that. If you don't like it, I'll show you where the door is. And when I talk like that, it's because I believe that we can be better than we are right now, that I will be here. I think someone was it you said that I hope to see you again or something like that. You could see me pretty much till you're tired of seeing me. I'm everywhere in the community. This work that you're doing, quite frankly, I don't like the fact that I think, and I don't want to speak out of turn here. I don't think you've had the best relationship with previous mayors. Is that a safe assumption?
Let's begin.
Okay, so that's okay. I mean, you know, I place no fault. And one thing you will see in our administration is you don't see me shooting arrows across the bow at the council. I was asked yesterday, well, what about those 3 council members that didn't agree with your plan on retention and recruiting? Well, they're elected. They have their own opinions. This is what we're trying to do. I was asked to stop some of our homeless encampment displacements during the heat wave. And some council members took some shots at me. And what I said is this is the time to get them in cooling centers. We spent months of outreach before we displace anyone. And am I supposed to stop when it's 95 degrees? Because if someone dies on my watch from a heat stroke, guess what our administration is going to be accused of doing? Nothing. It's not going to happen. Get them to cooling centers, get them to housing, and not tomorrow, now, and do that outreach for months. That's how we do this work. As it relates to place accountability, I hope to be your strongest partner. Your strongest partner. And I'll close with this part. When I've watched the CPC over the years, I want to say this in a politically palatable way. When I've watched the CPC over the years, I ask that you understand that no one has the corner on the market on accountability. That in this space, I assume most people, not all, but most people that are in the room with me talking about place accountability, they want accountability. They want officers to be responsible for their acts. And so when we look at even the Charlene and Lyle situation and we look at the inquest, my quote was very simple, that when we analyze force, we're stuck in this paradigm that was it reasonable, was it justified? And generally speaking, based on their training, if they see a knife, for example, and they see a threat, it may then justify what they're able to do, which many times means use lethal force. To me, that is not the right inquiry. That is not the right inquiry. The right inquiry is, based on what you know, how could you save a life? What could you have done differently? Policy-wise, implementation-wise. And if you look at it through that lens, she would be alive today. That if you look at it through the lens of, and quite candidly, and I've also said this in front of the officers, that for me, if, I don't say Reverend Hunter, because she's a Reverend Hunter, I'll say, Joel, are you a Reverend? Joel, you sitting in between 2 reverends.
Not a reverend.
Okay, well, I'm pick on you then. If I saw Joel here with a knife, yielding a knife, and I'm here, unless you're a pretty darn good thrower, I don't even see you as a threat when I have a gun right here. I don't see you as a threat. I see you as a person that's scared, number one, but I also see someone in here whose life I want preserved. How do we start having that discussion? What can I do? Although my training may say knife, threat, lethal force. So hopefully with the CPC collaborative with the Harrell administration, we can start looking at ways to educate everybody. And an idea that I had come, I know I said I was going to close, but sometimes I get fired up. An idea that I had where there were some controversial incidents that happened in Seattle, and I said, in a safe environment, let's analyze these situations. I was very vocal on John T. Williams because John T. Williams should be alive this day had we had the kind of lens that I've talked about. There was another incident that I don't know how to describe it. Some people on the call may know it better, but it was described as the slap bop incident where a person's head was right here across from City Hall. His head was pounded against a hood of a car by a police officer. Some of you may recall this. It's actually on YouTube. So let me describe it a little better so I can talk about the context. This gentleman was doing some bad stuff in a car. I think he was accused of domestic violence. He might have had some crack cocaine or something on him, but there was some intel that the officer had. And he told him to get out the car. And this is underneath the freeway here across from City Hall. This guy came out and he came around that pit of the car. And the officer said, show me your hands, show me your hands. And the guy went like that. He said, show me your hands. And so he went like that. And then from that, the officer sort of put his hands behind, took his hand and popped him on the head, his head, boom, back, and then he flung him to the ground. And that force used in that situation was deemed to be reasonable. I think the city did settle the civil lawsuit for less than $100,000, but the analysis of the force is used reasonable. And I sat there and watched that video with his city attorney, Pete Holmes at the time, his deputy attorney, and one or two officers, all of whom, quite frankly, saw the force as being reasonable because the guy was not compliant when he said, show me your hands, show me your hands, show me your hands. Now, you have to understand something. The chances of that guy being inebriated or high were quite high, literally. He wasn't very coherent. And if the officer's saying, show me your hands, he's like, I'm showing you the hand, my hands. He didn't know the officer meant like that. And so the officer took this as a sign of resistance. I would also suggest that this guy weighed all of 140, 150 pounds. He was a small guy. And the officer had a lot of force used. So even in those situations, once again, now he wasn't, thank God he wasn't killed, and I don't think he was permanently injured to my knowledge. But what I suggested is we take something like that, and my guess would be most people in this room would say that force was clearly unreasonable. I thought it was unreasonable. But can we look at that and look at through the eyes of the officer and tell me why lawyers, in fact, as memory serves, I had a few people from the law department look at it because I was pretty taken by it because I kept saying, how was this force reasonable? Even lawyers said, well, the force was reasonable because he showed a non-compliance with the instruction, with the order. And I said, well, what if the person just doesn't get it? What if his intellect just didn't allow him to interpret the orders the right way? So I'm going to close there and say I welcome any questions. I embrace this work. I also embrace my strategy to keep everybody safe, to motivate and inspire our officers to be better. One does not exclude the other. And I hope that you understand that as part of our platform. And heaven forbid you would actually join me in my crusade to keep all communities safe, regardless of race, religion, whatever demographic you want to divide us by. I want everyone in this city to be safe. This is my mic.
Mayor Harold, thank you. Really appreciate again being here and time to the Police Commission. I would like to take the opportunity or privilege as co-chair and just start with a couple questions, and then I'm sure there's other folks on the Zoom and perhaps in this room would have questions as well. But if I could just start, I guess it's a two-part question. As a lawyer, I can't help it. First, what is your vision for policing and accountability in Seattle? And then secondly, how do you see your administration collaborating with the Community Police Commission to improve community-based accountability and oversight in Seattle?
Okay, very good. So hopefully, in my opening remarks, we saw my vision for police and accountability. My vision are 1,450 officers that are culturally competent and are masters of de-escalation. At the same time, a very aggressive investment in community-based organizations, helping me keep communities safe, trauma treatment, crisis treatment, a very holistic approach to policing. I also want to do a deeper dive on the training of the police officers, make sure the training is consistent with the de-escalation approach. I think we've made some inroads in the last couple of years, but I do not think we're close to where we want to be with respect to the training. In terms of accountability, I think transparency is critical. Access to information is what I mean by that, that the public has a restored trust and faith that the systems are working to analyze force. I do want to be, I don't know how to always say it, I say out from under the consent decree. That's the only way I know how to say it. I do think that if we demonstrate to the court and to the monitors that we are complying with the established procedures, I'd like to be free from that. But as you may recall, I passed the bias-free policing law that institutionalized or memorialized many of those systems within the consent decree, such as tracking data, tracking racial profiling issues. And so I think that from an institutional standpoint, those elements of accountability have to be institutionalized in how we do business when we're out from under the consent decree. With respect to collaboration with the CPC, you have to tell me that because I know that I have a collaborative style. And I know that I'm asking my department heads, my executive team, and by the way, I do want to introduce Tim Burgess, my Director of Strategic Initiatives, that is, many of you know, former City Council President and Mayor, and is helping me at many of the initiatives we're driving. Thank you for being here, Tim. You tell me as we move forward, I don't have the quick, smart, wise answer. You tell me what collaboration looks like, if that will be our goal. I may think I'm being collaborative with you, and you may say, this guy's stiff-arming me every chance he gets. So to me, it looks like you have access to me. You can meet. Quite frankly, this is cool because you have to sort of know who I am. And if you don't, some of you know me for 30, 40 years. You know, I think you know my personal story. It's embedded in every website that we developed. So we talk about who I am and my values. When I first ran for office in 07, they were interviewing literally people I went to grade school with the TT minor. So I'm the same person I've always been. I'd rather have coffee conversation with people. Invite me over for a barbecue if you know what you're doing behind a grill.
All right.
And we work on our relationships. I think the problem in our city, quite frankly, we're just talking like this. Everyone's self-righteous. Everyone has all the answers. Everyone's better than one another. And no one is taking time to say, no, I feel you. I hear you. So the collaboration I hope to establish is going to be centered around relationships that I have with each and every one of you. And I will make myself available. Now, I try to, when I say that, I usually have a coffee or a bite with folks 2, 3, 4 at a time. So we'll see what that looks like. And then when we have to formalize it, let's do it.
Thank you, Mayor. Director Grant, is there anyone that is interested in asking Mayor a question? Director Walden?
Thank you, man, for being here. And you say you've been around Seattle a long time. So I have a couple of questions too. I mean, one of the questions that I've been asking for a long time, what would an out of policy takedown look like at that Saline allows? And would the officers who did an out of policy takedown still have it down?
Yeah. Can you help me understand what an out of policy takedown sort of means?
Part of the takedown is that the two officers would have found a way to take the knives, or as they said, and be able to get the holiday in a safe manner.
Right.
But it's not part of the policy.
I understand.
It's not,
Got it.
if it's not, if the officer is not trained to the policy, it would be no discussion. Or if the policy is outdated. So out of policy takedown means officer discretion. Now, officer discretion could be used against a person we salary now, but with the office still have a job.
Yeah, and I appreciate the question, so let me try to answer it directly. I have to give you some context. And people sometimes aren't happy when I say this, but you have to realize I have 12,000 employees under me, 2 of which might be those officers. I think they're both currently employed with the SPD, am I correct? If they're gone, I could be a little more fair. Are they still part of my team, those 2? I know what the results of the inquest. So I think it'd be inappropriate for a mayor to say, to denigrate any 2 employees while they work for me.
Right.
Okay? You may not like it. I'm pretty outspoken, but I will give them, so I'll speak on what I think what I would have liked to have occurred on the moment of that fateful day. That's how I'll ask the question. First of all, because we had let there be light.
Oh,
Is on,
yeah,
Oh, you got to do it in a moment. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I guess it's moving.
Okay. See, I said let there be light. Let there be light in my answer.
Not over here.
So the first thing is, again, we're to some extent, we're Monday morning quarterbacks after the fact. The first thing is, there should always be non-lethal force by every officer should have. They are required. I think there's 1 of 3. They get a pepper spray, a baton, a taser, but we always want to make sure everyone has non-lethal force. So there should have been in this situation, since we had a lot of intel on this Lyle, she had called the police, I think 19 times. We knew she had some mental illness issues or schizophrenia. There were some behavioral issues we were concerned about. So initially, as soon as we were called, in fact, by her, there should have been other communications to other people, said, we're in a crisis mode for her. She called us. And that also triggers that her life matters right there. And we should have also known, based on those calls, she was pregnant and she had children around. So the first step of analysis should have occurred as soon as the officers approached her. Do we have the right skill set there? What are we trying to do? She was calling to complain about something. She heard which probably wasn't occurring when she was in there. So we should have been smarter enough as a city to say, well, she could be delusional right now. I am dealing with possibly a delusional person. So when you look at that person, you do not see fear in this person, or you are not afraid of this person, you are cautious and you want to help. If I know someone's delusional and they're calling me for help, I want to help them. I certainly do not want to kill this person. So to me, the first thing starts with the tactical decisions and the mindset going in. And from there, if that is the case, then you open the door, and quite frankly, we've examined the camera policies, because I know the cameras weren't on once they went into privacy issues, there's other issues, but we want to make sure we can, without violating the privacy laws, that we're using the technology in the way it's intended to be used, so we can reconstruct actually what happened. From that point, and again, I know there was conflicting testimony, and it was, was an officer backed up? Did she yield the knife? And what actually occurred there? I think all of that, quite candidly, could have been avoided. And that inquiry was never made and that's what the work we're trying to do now. What could we have done differently, whether it's out of policy or not? Because by the time you get to yielded knife, close proximity, pulling the gun out, shooting and killing, multiple times, by the way, you've already not done things the way they should have been done in my administration in the city that I'm trying to do. And that's one example, by the way, perhaps one of the most vivid examples, because this woman was pregnant, and it was one of the most vivid examples. And we can go down and look at hundreds of other examples where I'm trying to figure out, and I believe the officers, in fact, I know this because I've talked to too many officers, that they understand what I'm trying to drive. In fact, many of the officers they told me directly they were very pleased with my comment. And I said, well, we're examining where the force should have been used. I'm examining, did we have the right people even in the room? And that is resonating even with our own officers.
My other question is like one Seattle, how do you, I mean, I'm in one Seattle, I mean, I think that it's a good idea that aspect of us separating here. And you take the time, my organization, it's really, it's good, one Seattle.
Thank you for that. Thanks for the question.
We also have Commissioner Wood who would like to ask a question. You can unmute yourself.
Thank you, Brandy, and thank you, Mayor Harrell, for joining us today. And I certainly appreciate many of the words you just shared about the killing of Miss Lyles, which goes into my first question. I have two questions. So firstly, regarding the hiring incentive package that you recently rolled out and council approved. There was an article in the Seattle Times a couple of weeks ago about how short-staffed the SPD's crisis response team and the DCRs are. So my first question is, as your administration embarks on this new round of SPD hiring, whether there'll be a prioritization given to hiring more specialized crisis response folks so that we can hopefully avoid incidents like the killing of Miss Lyles in the future. My second question, going back to your comments about some of the sweeps that were made during the recent heat wave, I certainly agree with you 100% that at a time like that, it's incumbent on the city to take extra steps in connecting folks to more stable shelter, to safer shelter during that dangerous time. However, I don't necessarily see that connection to still having to conduct the sweeps. I mean, you and I both know that there are many folks who receive outreach in camps and choose to decline other shelter. And it seems that for individuals like that, a tent is better than nothing. So I just wanted to ask you, assuming that those additional efforts to connect folks into shelter, why it was still necessary to sweep those camps. So those are my two questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Wood, the second part, I'll try to answer it. I think I understood your second part. I'll answer it. If I screw up on that, would just clarify. I think I understood it. Okay. First part, yes, that as we look at the kind of officer we are trying to find, we want those who can respond in a de-escalating way, in a more responsive way. We're also looking at recruiting from sort of different fields of people, for example, whether it's HBCUs or people who speak English as a second language. We're really aggressive in terms of getting the kind of diversity, not just racial or cultural diversity, but skill set diversity as well. You may recall that in years past, there was a strong emphasis on perhaps people from the armed forces or a different kind of skill set. And so we're trying to look at the whole person. And I think based on some of the officers we have now, and I'm telling them, you could be our best recruiter. For example, there's a African-American gentleman that went to Rainier Beach High School. He was sort of tatted up here and looked a little intimidating. I think his gentleman's a giant. And I asked him, well, why did you go into basic? And he gave his backstory, and it was quite inspiring. And I said, I need you to help me recruit like 30 of you. And I said, let's get together, let's have coffee. I literally talked to officers. I talked to a female officer on the north end, and I didn't know, I've never met this person. And she had been with the department a long time. And I said, wow, I said, I think almost every officer has given me a ticket in this city and 50 years of driving. I said, I don't know who you are. And she didn't know, she knew who I was, but I said, I think you could help me recruit. And this was after a dialogue with her. So we're going to try to find those types of officers, and that will be part of who we're recruiting. But relative to the sweeps, I got to make it clear that I meet with my unified care team collectively, and I hammer the concept that we do not move anyone unless we offer them shelter. And we should have, I think by the end of this month, what we call by name policy implemented by the Regional Housing Authority, of which we fund 70%, north of $118 million. The outreach, such we know everyone's name that are homeless, experiencing homelessness, so we can treat them individually. That if someone refuses housing, they have that right to refuse it. I have the right to make sure that our sidewalks are free of people such that a wheelchair person could get down the street. Across from City Hall, a person in a wheelchair, a blind person, could not walk down the sidewalk. I do not believe fundamentally that anyone has a right to obstruct the sidewalk. I also do not believe our parks should be de facto housing for anyone, particularly when I have housing accessible to people. So our approach, we lead with compassion, and quite candidly, I think many of you know my wife and I have been in this space a long time. I know a lot of these people on the streets. I could go to any encampment and they don't know me as Mayor Harold, they know me as Bruce, who I grew up with. And literally my staff is seeing people come up and I say, well, this guy, I've known for 30, 40 years. And so while people may disagree with me displacing people in the heat, after 2 months of outreach, trying to figure out what their either addiction is or what their problems are to allow them to be productive and self-optimized, I think my policy would not be to stop because the weather spikes to 95 degrees. And I think I've earned that right by virtue of being elected as mayor, because if that person passes out and has a heat stroke because I decided to do nothing, then I have to live with that. So I would not stop because it's all centered around doing the right outreach. Now, Commissioner Wood, I may not have answered your question. So did I answer your question? Perhaps we just disagree, but did I answer your question?
No, you certainly answered my second question. Just a point of clarification on my first question. I was asking about the specific job roles of our designated crisis responders in the SPD who do such good work with additional training beyond that of some of our other officers. So I'm wondering whether there's going to be a priority on hiring those folks with those specific mental health backgrounds to support the SPD crisis response team.
I'm going to let. I was going to say a bad joke, so I just said it. I'm going to let Jim handle that one.
Commissioner, yes. The article you referred to was a great example of where we pair police officers with mental health professionals. We would like to expand the number of those teams in the department. So watch in fall budget presentation about that, because that is a very successful program. Officers love it because they have options then, as opposed to just arrests or taking someone to Harborview. So it's a great program and a good question.
Great, thank you both.
And Commissioner Wood, I'll fill another question. I do want to take the opportunity to say this though. I tell you what drives me crazy is when my message of what I see as a safe Seattle going to, I think Joel's Chair Joel, I don't know what to call you, Attorney Joel, whatever that. What drives me crazy is when my narrative is completely slandered by saying, oh, he just wants cops everywhere. He's just cops. He's never met a cop. He wants police everywhere, blah, 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 blah. You know, I listen to what, I don't know if you're following at all. I have to always follow what crazy people do. I'm following what Trump's platform is right now. He came out with 6 bullet points and it's some absurd stuff. When I hear him talking about, for example, one of his things now are to basically kill drug dealers, to execute them as they do in other countries. That's one of his 6 bullet points. Let's just execute drug dealers. And I hear this kind of stuff that what the media does not cover is how much time I'm spending with community passageways and some of the community-based organizations. Yesterday, I was at the Rainier Beach Action Coalition's headquarters to really do a deep dive on investing in some of these strategies that are hard to measure. Prevention sometimes it's hard to measure. Even intervention strategies get difficult to measure. I'm not saying it can't be measured, but a lot of the lives we're saving is hard to measure, particularly when I have someone firing off 80 rounds, downtown in the downtown core area, and it's scaring everybody. That's a lot of bullet fire. So my message often and my vision on policing gets pretty distorted because I mean, you all know all too well how the media emphasizes certain things. I have a few minutes, but I have to. But can you see it? Okay. I have to do something very formal and put on a tie, but I don't want to shortchange because your takeaway would be, well, Harold didn't have enough time to spend with us. Hey, you guys started late, by the way. You brought me out of that 10 minutes. I was sitting here.
Mayor Harold, Officer Mullins has a question for you. You can
Okay.
take it.
Hello, sir. I'm Officer Mullins from the South Precinct.
Mark, are you able to speak up a little bit?
I can hear him, Brad.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Sound like you're a million miles away, but we can hear you and see your big hand.
I'm sorry. I first want to say that I appreciate the fact that you have been coming to roll calls. You've appeared at the South Precinct on every watch. And all of our officers have basically got to look you in the eye, which is something that has been different. I've been around for 32 years, and we haven't had a mayor come down like you have to look the officers in the eye and say what you mean. Tell them what you want. Tell them what your expectations are, so that there's no confusion. Also, I mean, the leadership is unprecedented. We haven't had that. We haven't even had really some of our upper management people come down and visit us in roll call. So that's appreciated. But I do have a couple of questions. And one of the questions is, during this time of defunding, we have lost community policing, which I'm confused about because I thought that was part of the best part of SPD in its outreach and being able to communicate with the community in which the precinct lies in. I also question during the funding time the fact that we took officers out of our schools, school resource officers. Now, I know a lot of school resource officers who were fantastic, and the fact that some of the kids in those schools, the only they would talk to or trusted was a police officer. And even if there's just one kid in one school who decides that that officer is the one that he feels comfortable talking to or working his problems out with, it's worth it. Not to mention the fact that we are now have a disturbing trend of people coming into schools and shooting them up. So I think those two assets are an overreach of what defunding is. And I would ask that you think about, contemplate that, or what are your thoughts on those two programs?
Thank you, Officer Mullins. So I'm going to speak quickly, and I hope I do the questions justice. I was asked yesterday about what was my attitude toward defunding and those who supported defunding. And I'll give the same answer that I've been giving, that I understand why people are saying that. I could go through the history of police departments and their origins in the country, and they look at George Floyd's murder in the context of murders through the last hundreds of years. I get it. But I think the mechanism by which we create the department should not be defunding. If anything, you double down because you're trying to not only change the people, you're trying to change the culture, you're trying to change the tactics, and you always need resources to optimize the group or the department or the corporation, whether it's a private corporation, a nonprofit organization. You need resources to improve it. You don't starve it from resources. I don't have a scarcity mentality when it comes to what I'm trying to improve, which is my core responsibility. So when I'm down officers, so I don't criticize folks for that effort. I mean, they have a right to have any opinion they want. I don't own the right to tell them what their opinion should be. I look at the math. I need more eyes on the ground and the kind of eyes that I want to see. So that's where I come out of it. My sexual assault unit, for example, we took some hits on, I have all of these detectives, all of these people doing patrol work because I had the exodus of all these officers. So we didn't back off of any resources. In fact, I agreed to even doing an audit on how we're doing it to implement best practices in sexual assault unit investigations. But that gives you the context of what hand I'm dealt when I'm down so many officers. So what I'm asking with respect to community policing, which is critical, I'm hoping your commission, the Community Police Commission, can help me not only address the issues of accountability, but address the issues of helping me keep people safe. Can you all do that as well? Because we all understand accountability. And by the way, it's just like racism. In our lifetime, we will not defeat racism. There's not like a pot at the end of the rainbow in our life. It's the journey to defeat it. My guess would be eliminating all unreasonable force in our police department. I'd love to be able to brag about that. But that's a journey because I only need one officer to screw up. And we did not reach that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. So I'm hoping that the Community Police Commission, I want to sort of close on this one, is that you help me not only embrace accountability, but help me protect my babies in here, my elders in here, my people who are underrepresented, help me protect them. That's the fuel in my tank. And community policing is part of that answer. Help me recruit. It's okay to help me recruit. In fact, I'm trying to make it cool again and say, look, my high school football player, Mark heard me say this, my high school coach was a police officer. I would go to him for advice. And one thing I put under a previous mayor, I put money in the budget to have the officers go down and throw a football or kick a soccer ball or play baseball with the kids when they're 9 or 10 years old. Have those little badges on there. Develop relationships with these kids who are 9 or 10 because they're going to need you when they're 13, 14, 15. Yeah. They may see you as a friendly person. I don't want them to run every time they see the cops. So I'm hoping the CPC helps me with this work at community policing. Schools. We have to earn the trust and the right to go back into schools because the kids do not want us in the schools right now. But some of them do. And some of them are hungry. And it's crazy violent right now. These kids are getting killed for this thing. This is a $1,000 phone here, these iPhones, right? Well, this one's pretty old, but you get the point. This is a computer. And we didn't have these, and I'm old as dirt, so we didn't have these things when I was young. But we have to keep these kids safe. And I think that good officers can develop those relationships. So right now I'm working with the superintendent, Dr. Jones, Brandon Hershey, the chairman of the board, to get those relationships. We have to earn it. So I'm hoping again, the Community Police Commission can at least see what we're trying to do because you can be an invaluable asset in this space. I apologize, I have to go. And I'll be back. I'll be back when you need me. But thank you for all of the work you all are doing. This is part of our one shadow concept. We embrace it. And I try to make it cool to say we actually love this city because I do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, we are grateful for Mayor Harrell and taking the time to be with us today and answer some of the commission questions. We are now going to move into our public comment. And public comment is welcomed by the CPC. And individual speakers will be provided up to 2 minutes to comment about items that are on the meeting agenda. Director Grant, do we have any individuals signed up for public comment?
We do. We have Valerie who has her hand up now.
Okay.
Just a second, and Dr.
And-
Gale.
And we're gonna get the timer going as well.
Valerie, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted now. Good morning, CPC, and I'm sorry I couldn't make this when Mayor Harrell was here, because this is really partly a comment for Mayor Harrell, but it's also for all of you. And I hope that I convey this comment to him in some way. He talked about the shooting of Charlena Lyles today pretty extensively and critically. And I would agree with him that there were lots of different ways that police could have responded to that incident, but those would be dependent probably on not just practice and training, but also on policy. So, we've had quite a few shootings, police shootings in Seattle of people in crisis who've only been armed with a knife, people like Terry Caver and Derek Hayden. So I was going to ask Mayor Harrell and the CPC to please familiarize yourselves with different possible responses to people with a knife. There's a good article in the South Seattle Emerald by Dr. Gale that was published in June that goes into detail about a professional police organization in the United States, PERF, that is advocating for changes in responses to people with knives, and also practice in other countries that we could learn from. That's something that the CPC and this mayor's administration could start working on now, changing Seattle police policy encounters someone with a knife who doesn't have a gun. It's something that we could begin to do now to save lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie. We also have Dr. Gale, who is up next. Dr. Gale, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Okay, I think, am I unmuted?
Yes, sir, you are.
Okay, so there's something at odds between what Mayor Harrell said and the reality that he hired as public safety director, current public safety director, the guy that actually helped defend New York City against the claims of the Central Park Five, that's Andrew Meyerberg, and then came to Seattle and falsely prosecuted a paraplegic black man who police beat up, and he prosecuted that man by withholding evidence. And I will also point out Meyerberg is currently under investigation for violating the medical privacy of someone who complained about police abuse. So there's something, I feel like we're being gaslighted. Back to what Valerie mentioned in terms of Charlena Lyles, it's been over 9 years since the CPC has had as its remit changing policy. 9 years. And in the 5 years since Charlena was killed, SPD killed Albert Fredericks Jr., Ioseo Folatogo, Danny Rodriguez, Ryan Smith, Sean Lee Fur, Terry Caver, Derek Hayden, and the person unnamed in January. All of these people had no weapon or an edged weapon and were in behavioral crisis. So again, there's a problem here. We have 8 people who were killed after Charlena, and yet we say we need to change policy. What has taken, why have 9 years gone by? And last thing I'll just mention for the record, again, we forget people who are killed by police, so I just want to honor the fact that the person that Harold referred to by the King County Sheriffs, it was Christopher Sean Hayes, and he wasn't simply injured, he died. But again, we forget that.
Thank you for your public comments. And is there anyone that would like to respond to the public comment?
I would respond to the comment about the policy, about the shooting. The mothers put out a statement, and we're glad to offer that statement to Dr. Gale about the shootings and which shootings actually was considered mentally ill, and a couple of shootings that he talked about was actually domestic violence, and it's something that happens around those cases. So I'll make sure that the CPC can get that, and then we can post it on the website. I may be able to make sure, or Mr. Howard Gale can get that. And we have been working on policy for 10 years and for 9 years. And some of the policies that we recommended was accepted by the police department and trained on those policies. And so if we need to go back and look at the policies that was recommended 9 years ago, I mean, and one of the policies that was recommended and also part of the state policy now is the use of force policy that the CPC worked on and was signed off by the judge, and it says de-escalation should be the first thing that happens. And the state, the Attorney General has accepted that policy, and it would be part of the statewide policy for this, that the state is working on for policing. So there have been some policies that we have done and have been elevated to the state level.
Thank you, Reverend Walden. Any other comments in response to the public comment? Thank you very much. We'll move forward to some updates and co-chair updates. One of the things that the co-chairs would like to emphasize is that we still need participation, greater participation of our commissioners on our work groups. We have had to step back a bit because of staffing at CPC. But we also need more engagement from the commissioners. And so we will be in touch to find out which work groups you would like to participate in, as well as attending the CPC meetings. Any other co-chair updates?
Thank you, Reverend Hunter. I would just echo that we have 10 members present for today's meeting, and we're looking forward to continued participation moving forward. The commission is set up of 21, comprised of 21 positions of commissioners, each of whom are volunteers, and the contributions of each volunteer commissioner is greatly appreciated. But to get the critical work done to this commission, Reverend Hunter is correct. We are looking for greater participation in work groups. We've been on a little bit of a hiatus over the last couple of months. There's been some understandable absences and vacancies, but we are excited to get those behind us, and this fall really diving in and getting our work groups back up and running and contributing and having greater updates or larger updates about the work group work. And so again, as Reverend Walden mentioned, the commission has done a lot of work over the last 9 years, and it's all volunteer commissioner driven. And we're looking forward to getting more commissioners on board and engaged this fall.
Thank you. Executive Director Grant.
Thank you, Reverend Hunter. Thank you to the co-chairs. I just have a couple of updates. I will have more substantial ones for our first September meeting, but I want to kind of piggyback a little bit about what the co-chairs were saying. I've done outreach calls to various commissioners, and am still open to if there are impediments or things that are in the way or that would be helpful regarding scheduling or anything like that, please feel free to reach out as we begin to resume those work groups. Again, I just want to really highlight it's super imperative that we have your voice and have your involvement moving forward. Also, I will just add that my continued focus right now is on recruitment and our big move. And other than that, there are no other updates outside of wanting to thank co-chair leadership and thanking Mayor Harrell for joining us today.
May I ask for a little clarity on the move to the new space and when that, you think that might happen?
Yep, absolutely. So Reverend Hunter, we will, we have a move date for August 30th. It was pushed back because of staff changes and not to mention the folks that are here, we had come down and had contracted COVID. And so just for safety purposes, we had not been able to do that move, but it has been rescheduled. The IT move is set up. We have our final kind of packing date set up for next Friday, but our hope is, fingers crossed, nothing changes. It will be August the 30th.
Okay, okay, great. Thank you,
Mhm.
thank you. Any new business? Okay, moving right along. Work group updates. There's none from police practices. How about from community engagement? Ms. Felicia, I see you here.
Yes, thank you, Reverend Hunter. So for community engagement, tomorrow we've been invited to talk about CPC at the African American Advisory Council meeting to be held at Garfield at 6 p.m. And I plan to be there and bring our brochures and talk about the work of the commission. And I think it's a great opportunity to, try to recruit some new commissioners and more participation. So I would love to have any support from any commissioners that are available to come and represent CPC at the African American Advisory Council meeting. Also, the other one other subject is I'll bring up again is the two conferences coming up very soon. The IACP conference is October the 15th through the 18th, and NACOL is starts September the 9th, which is just around the corner. So I'm asking again if any of the commissioners would like to attend either of these or either of these conferences, that you let me know by Monday. Because I got to get the paperwork in and if you're interested in going. So NACOL is in Fort Worth, and then IACP is in Dallas.
Tell us about IEC.
Okay, IACP is the International Association of Chief of Police. And NACOL.
So they're both in Texas.
They're both in Texas. One's in September, one is in October. Yeah. So yeah, just let me know. And if you need more information about the conferences, I'm happy to provide that for you. Also, if there are any topics or subjects or things you want discussed for the next community engagement meeting, I always put the invitation out to let me know that as well as we prepare for the next. Thank you.
You're welcome. And thank you for the community engagement meeting that was held a week ago, I believe, where Gino Betts was the guest, and it was a lively conversation and well done. So thank you for inviting him to be your guest, be our guest at that event.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I don't know if there's any other work group updates from behavioral health or complaints and appeals, the legislative agenda. I'm not thinking there are.
There are no updates at this
Okay,
time.
all right. Well, this concludes our meeting, and we want to thank everyone for coming today, and we will convene again publicly in 2 weeks. So thank you all.
Thank you.